Have you ever felt that wealth was something reserved for others, like a world you could see but never touch? Maybe you've read all the books, repeated the affirmations, visualized your dream life, and yet something remains locked away. A silent feeling of always being on the edge, but never quite in. Abundance. Money seems to slip through your fingers, and deep down in your soul, a doubt begins to grow. Is there something wrong with me? But what if I told you that it's not the world that's denying you prosperity, but a part of you that hasn't yet learned to vibrate in the language of wealth? Napoleon Hill discovered this not in books, but directly from the mind of one of the richest and most visionary men in history, Andrew Carnegie. What Carnegie revealed to Hill, and what few have understood, is that wealth does not begin with external effort. It is born of an invisible, silent, vibrational intention, a frequency of certainty so intense that the entire universe begins to bend to respond. It's not about wanting, it's about being. It's not about chasing, it's about becoming the kind of presence that wealth recognizes. And this type of presence only arises when you define, with all your soul, a purpose that does not sway in the wind of doubts. Before money is a number, it is coherence. Your bank account, as painful as it may be to see, is often a mirror. It does not only reflect what you earn, it reflects the energy you sustain when no one is looking, when you are alone, thinking about what you deserve, about what is possible, about who you really are. This vibration, which mixes beliefs, memories, emotions, and intention, is the code that defines how much life can give you. And if this code is misaligned, no matter how hard you try, reality will always slip through your fingers. Napoleon Hill spoke of an almost secret, almost sacred triad: burning desire, self-sustaining faith, and disciplined action. It is not just a formula, it is a frequency, a way of occupying time and space with vibrational conviction. Burning desire is not lack, it is clarity. Self-sustaining faith is not passively waiting. It is trusting even when nothing seems to work. And disciplined action is not soulless sacrifice. It is movement aligned with something greater than the ego. When these three forces meet, something changes. Inside, and then outside. William Walker Atkinson said, "Thoughts are things. Things that vibrate. Things that magnetize. Things that create. And when your thoughts are repeated with emotion, they create vibrational patterns that begin to attract corresponding experiences. But if inside you there is more fear than faith, more judgment than merit, more doubt than presence, this vibration becomes an invisible prison, and you don't see the bars, but you feel the limit." Many people who are listening now may carry a silent pain, the pain of having tried everything, of having searched, studied, tried to manifest, of having taken courses, followed gurus, written goals, but nothing changed, or changed little, or went backwards. And this pain has a name: vibrational failure. It is not guilt, it is not punishment, it is just the echo of an energy field that is still misaligned. And that is why this video exists. Not to promise you magic, not to sell you cheap hope, but to lead you to a deeper, more honest, and more liberating understanding of what it really means to manifest wealth. Over the next few hours, we're going to open doors inside your mind. Doors that have been locked for years. Doors that hold inherited beliefs, forgotten traumas, distorted views of worthiness, and chapter by chapter, we're going to realign your inner field so that it becomes what it was always meant to be: a fertile ground for true abundance. This is not a video about money. It's a video about frequency, about identity, about presence, about becoming, from the inside out, the kind of being the universe chooses to bless. And it all starts now. The invisible root of scarcity, inherited emotional blockage. Not all scarcity is born from a lack of opportunity. Not all financial emptiness is due to bad choices or lack of effort. Sometimes the root is much deeper, buried in a place where logic cannot reach. It is in the realm of inherited emotions, in the silences of childhood, in the looks that taught us that wanting too much was dangerous or shameful. Many grew up hearing that money was dirty, that the rich were untrustworthy, that being spiritual meant giving up material things. These phrases, even if they were not said directly, were transmitted in the tone, in the gestures, in the unconscious fears of parents, grandparents, and teachers. And even without realizing it, the child absorbed them and stored them in the body, in the heart, in the vibration, like a silent pact with scarcity, so as not to betray one's origins, so as not to seem selfish, so as not to distance themselves from the family that always fought. That is why, even in adulthood, even with books read, goals written down, and a genuine desire to prosper, something inside you gets stuck. An invisible limit prevents you from taking the leap. It is not conscious sabotage. It is an energetic loyalty to the pains of the past, a cellular memory that screams, if you prosper too much, you will stop being who you were. You will stop being accepted. You will be punished, or you will be alone. Napoleon Hill understood that this blockage is not rational. It is vibrational. It is in the body, in the way you breathe when you think about money, in the tightness in your stomach when you receive a larger amount, in the difficulty of charging for your work, in the impulse to spend everything as soon as you receive it. It is as if something inside you says, this is not safe. This is not for me, but this route is not destiny. It is a starting point, a truth that, when recognized with love and presence, can be dissolved, not with struggle, but with awareness, with a new internal agreement, with a new level of permission. And this permission begins when you understand that honoring your ancestry does not mean repeating your pain, that growing financially, it does not have to be an act of betrayal. It can be an act of healing, of transcendence, of liberation. Scarcity is not just in numbers, it is in identity. And when you begin to rewrite this identity with truth, with compassion, with a clear vibrational intention, the field begins to respond, slowly, gently, but with power. The next step is to understand why, even with well-defined goals, many still stray from true abundance. Because there is a silent error that weakens the energy of manifestation before it even begins. And that is what we are going to talk about now. The fatal error of focusing only on financial goals. There is a subtle, almost invisible trap that captures even the most disciplined minds. An illusion that seems logical, but that sabotages the vibrational field of abundance before it even blossoms. It is the idea that all it takes is to set specific financial goals and pursue them with strength, focus, and faith. But the truth is that money does not move only through strategic direction. It responds to subtle fields of coherence, meaning, and presence. Napoleon Hill was clear. Money is a byproduct. It is a consequence, not a cause. It appears as a reflection of a mind that is aligned, not just determined. When you obsessively focus on the number, the amount, the cold objective, you begin to drain the essence of manifestation. Energy stops flowing from the soul and becomes compressed by the control of the ego. And where there is excessive control, there is hidden fear. Empty goals without an emotional purpose create a frequency of lack. No matter how much they are written in beautiful notebooks, no matter how much they are visualized every day, if they do not come from an authentic desire to express who you are, they only reinforce the inner hole. And the universe does not respond to goals. It responds to vibrational states. It is different to say, I want to earn 100,000 Rs, than to say, I want to live in a state where my deepest expression is recognized, valued, and amply rewarded. The first request arises from scarcity. The second is born from connection. And it is this connection that Hill called a mind with purpose. Not just any purpose, but the one that beats in your chest even when you are silent. The one that transcends time, failures, and trials. The one that does not sell itself for numbers, but attracts numbers by existing with truth. When you pursue goals that are disconnected from your soul, the field feels it, and it responds with resistance. You strive, work, and get tired, but the fruits don't come, or they come, but they don't sustain you, because the field hasn't been nourished, because the vibration hasn't been rooted in who you really are. It's like planting in dry soil. The appearance is there, but the harvest never blooms. The solution is not to abandon your goals. It's to transform them into extensions of your vibrational identity. It's to ask, with courage, who do I need to become for this goal to be inevitable? What does this amount represent emotionally for me? Freedom, security, recognition, and then vibrate that before the number arrives. Money, like energy, needs a clear channel to flow. And that channel isn't your spreadsheet. It's your field. It's your presence. It's the silence where your truth lives. The next key lies precisely in the relationship between what you want and who you believe you are. Because there's no point in dreaming big if your identity still vibrates smallness. That's what reveals the next step. Why visualizing wealth doesn't work if your identity vibrates scarcity. There's something deeply frustrating about imagining every day a life of abundance and seeing every day that nothing changes. You close your eyes, see the car of your dreams, the quiet house full of light, the bank account without fear. You feel that future for a few seconds. But when you open your eyes, reality remains still, and over time, doubt begins to grow. Is visualization a pretty lie? Is this method just a consolation? The problem isn't in the practice. It's in the field that supports it. Visualizing wealth is a powerful tool, but only if the vibrational identity that supports this image is aligned with it. Because the universe doesn't just respond to what you imagine, it responds to who you are while you imagine it. If deep down, your vibration still carries guilt for wanting more, if you still feel small, unworthy, or out of place when you think of prosperity, this energy infiltrates the image and turns it into noise. Intention and emotion come into conflict. You desire abundance with your mind, but you vibrate scarcity with your body. And the quantum field feels this dissonance, and it responds with silence. Napoleon Hill knew that visualizing is not enough. You have to incarnate. Incorporate the image not only on the mental plane, but on the vibrational plane. And this requires internal work. It requires rewriting beliefs, challenging old memories, looking at forgotten traumas that taught that wealth was dangerous, lonely, or unattainable. The mind creates the script, but it is the identity that defines whether it will be accepted by the universe. And identity is frequency. It is the set of emotions, thoughts, and sensations that you sustain throughout the day. Not only in the moments of visualization, but especially in the moments when you feel alone, tired, rejected. That is when your true vibration reveals itself. When the image of the future collides with the self-image of the present, there is no room for manifestation because the energy is dispersed, because the field feels incoherent, because faith is diluted in doubt. And where there is chronic doubt, there is no attraction, there is resistance. You need to ask yourself, with courage, when you imagine wealth, how does your body react? Does it relax or contract? Does it expand or shrink? Is there enthusiasm or shame? Because this is the thermometer of your vibrational identity. And only when it is reprogrammed with truth, with presence, with coherent intention, will the image cease to be just a fantasy, and it will begin to become inevitable. The next point takes us even deeper into this territory of subtle incoherence, because sometimes the intention is clear, but actions reveal the opposite. And this misalignment, even when invisible, is one of the greatest saboteurs of manifestation. That is what we are going to talk about now. The silent misalignment between intention and action. What you say you want is not always what your body believes is possible. There are times when your mouth speaks of abundance, but your actions reveal fear. Your thoughts scream prosperity, but your actions whisper escape. And this misalignment, however subtle, weakens the field of manifestation like an invisible crack that leaks all the strength of your desire. Many people say with conviction that they want to get rich, but when we look closely at what they actually do, day after day, we see choices guided by doubt, decisions guided by fear, movements hampered by old insecurities. Action becomes too cautious, too hesitant, too interrupted, and the universe notices. Because the universe doesn't read words. It reads vibration, Napoleon Hill understood that wanting is just the first step, but wanting is not enough. Wanting needs to be supported by a sequence of actions that confirm the intention, and not actions based on desperation or haste, but actions that carry the energy of confidence, of silent certainty, of vibrational faith. Acting out of fear is very different from acting with clarity. When action is born from the panic of falling behind, it creates more scarcity. When it is born from the shame of not having, it attracts more humiliation. When it comes from the desire to prove something to someone, it strengthens the prison of the ego. Only when action is inspired, coherent with the purpose, connected to the heart, does it become an energetic bridge to abundance. This silent misalignment between intention and behavior is like walking with your foot on the accelerator and the brake at the same time. You make an effort, you move, but you don't get anywhere. And the most painful thing is that often you don't even realize that you are sabotaging yourself, because the rational mind finds justifications. It tells you that you are being prudent, that you are waiting for the right moment, who is analyzing the risks. But deep down, it is fear that is driving. And fear, even disguised as logic, emits a frequency that impedes the flow. The field feels it and responds with blocks, not because it is punishing you, but because it is only returning what you are emitting. The secret is to restore the vibrational integrity between what you say you want, what you feel, and what you do. This coherence is what Hill called mental discipline, not in the sense of rigidity, but as internal alignment. Thinking about prosperity, feeling deserving of it, and acting as if it were already in motion. This is the field where miracles become natural. In the next chapter, we delve even deeper into what many believe to be luck, but which is actually a vibrational reflection of silent preparation and attunement to divine timing. Because the truth about attracting money is far beyond chance. It is in what you become while no one is looking. The myth of luck, the brutal truth about who attracts money. The idea of luck is one of the most comforting and, at the same time, most paralyzing that exists. It comforts because it offers a simple explanation for the success of others. It paralyzes because it convinces the unconscious that prosperity is a matter of chance and not of vibration. But the truth is that luck, as Hill and Carnegie understood, is not magic. It is spiritual mathematics. It is the meeting point between a prepared mind and an opportunity that already existed, but that only reveals itself to those who have learned to see. Most people observe those who prosper with a look of mixed admiration and distrust. It is easy to think that someone was lucky, that they were in the right place at the right time, but few realize what came before. The years of silent preparation, the invisible sacrifices, the choices that seemed small but carried vibrational greatness. The way in which that person maintained an energy of readiness even when the world still did not respond. Carnegie said that luck is the name we give to the synchronicity between preparation and opportunity. And the preparation he spoke of was not just technical, it was spiritual. It was about refining one's own frequency until it was compatible with what one wanted to receive. It was about building an internal field that not only asks for abundance, but supports it, honors it, and distributes it consciously, because money doesn't change who you are, it amplifies it. If you carry doubts, it will bring more confusion. If you live to please others, it will increase the pressure. If you vibrate with fear of loss, it will become a constant source of anxiety. But if you build in silence a firm, clear, centered vibrational identity, money becomes a channel of expansion, not a burden. Luck, then, is not something that is expected. It is something that is built, moment by moment, in the way you choose to respond to the world, in the micro decisions of your daily life, in the emotions that you nurture, in the vision that you hold, even when everything seems to be at a standstill. What seems random is, in fact, deeply consistent with the frequency that you have been emitting. That is why some people enter environments and immediately attract opportunities, not because they asked for it, but because they were ready, because they became, vibrationally, the answer someone was looking for. And when you understand this, something changes. Haste gives way to precision. Desperation dissolves into confidence. And the journey stops being about chasing something out there and becomes about refining who you are here inside. In the next chapter, we will touch on one of the most sensitive and determining layers of this entire journey, the feeling of deservingness, because it is not how much you want that determines how much you receive. It is how much you truly believe that you deserve what you ask for. And this frequency, more than any other, defines the destiny of your prosperity. Emotional frequency of deservingness, what you truly believe about yourself when trying to get rich. There is a silent point within every human being, a point that often is not touched even by the most trained mind, nor by the most spiritualized heart. It is the point where the raw and emotional truth about what you believe you deserve lives. Not what you say, not what you desire, but what you feel, deeply, silently, when no one is around. You can affirm 100 times a day that you want to be prosperous. You can write goals, visualize, make plans. But if, deep within your vibration, there still lives a voice saying, "This is not for me. I am not enough. I cannot be trusted with so much," the field feels it, and it gives back. Deservingness is not an intellectual belief. It lives in the body. It is in the gestures, in the small habits, in the daily choices. It is in the way you treat yourself, in how much you respect yourself, in the type of limits you set. It is in your ability to say yes to life, but also in your ability to say no to what no longer honors who you are becoming. Napoleon Hill knew that a desire without the vibration of deservingness is just an illusion. He called this self-sustaining faith. Not the kind of faith that depends on external signs, but the kind that is born from the inner certainty that you are, indeed, a worthy channel for wealth. And this faith cannot be taught. It awakens. The challenge is that many carry, without realizing it, layers and layers of self-judgment, old stories of failure, inner voices inherited from authority figures who said that wanting more was selfishness, that wanting financial freedom was a sign of vanity or pride. And even after years, these voices still vibrate. They still dictate decisions. They still limit possibilities. And the body feels it. When you try to move forward, it contracts. When an opportunity arises, it hesitates. When the money finally arrives, something inside boycotts, spends, loses, runs away. Because there is an unresolved conflict between what you consciously want and what you unconsciously believe you deserve. This disconnection creates an unstable vibrational field. A field that sometimes attracts, but does not sustain. That receives, but does not expand. That manifests, but does not integrate. And this is not failure. It is an invitation to look within with more compassion, to heal the wounds that told you were not enough, to rewrite the story of your worth with your own hands, because the universe does not reward effort, it rewards frequency, and the frequency of deserving is silent, but powerful. When it settles, everything changes. Your outlook changes, your posture changes, your decisions align, and money, which previously seemed distant, begins to recognize your new vibration. It begins to approach you. In the next chapter, we will delve into one of the most disguised traps on the journey to abundance, a behavior that seems like productivity, but is actually an emotional escape. And as long as it is not recognized, it will continue to consume energy and block the flow. It is time to reveal what is hidden behind constant doing. Beware of productivity, disguised as escape. There is a form of fatigue that does not come from overwork. It comes from over-escape. From doing too much of what does not touch the soul, from being so busy with tasks, goals, projects, that there is no room for the silence that reveals true alignment. This productivity, so praised, so applauded, is often just a sophisticated way of avoiding feeling, avoiding looking, avoiding transforming. The culture of performance teaches that doing is always better than stopping. That movement is always better than pausing. That producing is always better than simply being. But in the vibrational field of manifestation, this is a dangerous lie, because energy does not move with the quantity of what is done, but with the quality of the intention behind what is done. Napoleon Hill knew this when he spoke of the importance of disciplined action. He wasn't talking about rushing, he was talking about vibrational precision, about acting at the right time, with the right heart, for a reason that pulses with truth. When you act only to escape the discomfort of being still, that action doesn't create a future. It only feeds the cycle. And the universe, which responds to coherence, falls silent. The problem is that this disguised productivity is subtle. It looks like responsibility. It looks like commitment. But behind it all, there is fear. The fear of stopping and realizing that you are disconnected. The fear of admitting that despite all the activity, your soul still feels empty. The fear of looking inside and finding parts of you that still doubt your worthiness, that still don't trust life, that still haven't learned to receive. And this fear creates a field of resistance, of exhaustion, of unstable results. You may even achieve some achievements, but they don't sustain your soul because they come from a place of tension, not presence, of effort, not expansion. True productivity is born from the center. It comes after silence, after internal listening, after reconnection. It is the consequence of a vibrational alignment that doesn't need to prove itself, that doesn't need to justify itself, that doesn't need to rush, because it knows it is being guided. There are times when stopping is the most powerful act, when doing less is the most strategic gesture, in which allowing life to unfold without control is the key to opening doors that no amount of effort could open. Abundance is not a goal, it is a frequency, and to access it, sometimes you have to unlearn the rhythm of haste and relearn the melody of presence. In the next chapter, we will touch on one of Napoleon Hill's most controversial and misunderstood techniques, a practice that involves transmuting sexual energy into creative power and financial magnetism. Few are able to apply it clearly because it requires more than discipline. It requires awareness and surrender, the mental model of transmuting sexual desire. There is a powerful, primitive, and creative energy that lives in all of us, a force that, when misunderstood, becomes nothing more than carnal desire, impulse, tension, but that, when redirected with awareness, transforms into vibrational fuel for manifestation, prosperity, and magnetism. Napoleon Hill called this the transmutation of sexual desire. For many, this concept still sounds strange, because we have been taught to see sexual desire as something separate from spirituality, as if it were an inferior, suppressed, or hidden energy. But Hill saw it differently. He understood that this force was not an obstacle, but a bridge, a vital current that, if channeled, could elevate human beings to extraordinary levels of creation, intuition, and power of attraction. Sexual energy is, in its essence, an expression of life. It is not limited to the physical act. It pulsates in every idea that is born, in every project that blossoms, in every creative gesture that transforms the invisible into the visible. When you learn not to waste it, not to sell it for immediate and momentary pleasures, it builds up inside you like a growing magnetic field, and this field attracts. Hill realized that the great achievers in history often had a strong sexual drive, not because they were dominated by it, but because they learned to use it as a driving force for achievement. They transmuted tension into presence, desire into focus, impulse into creation. They did not deny the energy, but they sublimated it. The difficulty lies in the fact that, for this to happen, you have to face your own shadow, face the unconscious patterns of compulsion, guilt, and repression, because many were taught to be ashamed of this force, to hide it, to suffocate it. And this repression creates blockages, fragmented vibrations, energetic noise. But when you begin to reconcile with this energy, something changes. The body relaxes, the mind expands, the soul aligns. Transmutation is not abstinence. It is choice. It is presence. It is transforming the fire of desire into the light of intention. It is learning to breathe with energy, to move it through the body, to direct it toward goals that transcend the ego. And when this practice becomes an internal state, you begin to vibrate differently. Your presence changes. Your speech gains weight. Your gaze attracts. Because there is something in you that pulses with life, without urgency, without need, without dispersion. Few apply this technique in depth because it requires continuous awareness. It requires self-observation. It requires respect for one's own energy. But those who learn it discover an inexhaustible source of creative power. And this power, when combined with clarity of purpose and vibrational discipline, creates a combination that the universe cannot ignore. In the next chapter, we will explore how your brain's neurochemistry may be silently sabotaging your prosperity. Because when dopamine is poorly regulated, the present becomes a prison, and future wealth is exchanged for immediate crumbs. How the brain sabotages its abundance with poorly regulated dopamine. Inside your brain, there is a substance that regulates pleasure, focus, motivation, and the drive to seek something new. It is called dopamine, and although it is essential for its functioning, when unregulated, it becomes an invisible trap. A trap that exchanges grand visions of the future for small reliefs in the present. That steals energy from achievement and gives it to distraction. That makes you give up too soon and accept much less than you really want. We live in a dopaminergic culture, a culture where every click, every notification, every small digital reward activates a quick and empty spike of pleasure. And the brain, conditioned by this repetition, begins to seek the shortest path. The path of immediate gratification, of superficial comfort, of instant relief. And in this search, it abandons the field of a true construction. Napoleon Hill understood that the human mind needed direction, that, without a greater purpose, it would get lost in fleeting desires. He spoke about the power of discipline, not just as an effort, but as a channel, because without a channel, energy is dispersed, and a scattered mind does not manifest. It only dreams, gets frustrated, and repeats. When dopamine is constantly stimulated by artificial sources, the ability to sustain a long-term vision weakens. You begin to avoid boredom, but it is in boredom that great ideas emerge. You begin to reject silence, but it is in silence that intuition speaks. You begin to demand immediate results, but it is in patience that the vibration aligns with the frequency of what is great. Prosperity requires a brain trained for deep pleasure, for the pleasure that comes from consistency, from the achievement that grows day after day, from the journey that is built with presence, and not in haste. And to do this, it is necessary to re-educate the nervous system, remove excessive stimuli, learn to endure the void without trying to fill it, find beauty in the process, and not just in the result. Dopaminergic sabotage is treacherous because it dresses up as relief. But every time you choose this quick relief, you are energetically postponing the construction of your field of abundance. You are telling the universe, I don't trust time. I can't stand the now. I need something now, even if it's just a little. And this frequency does not attract wealth. It attracts repetition. Recognizing this pattern is the beginning of freedom. When you begin to cultivate a more stable dopamine with habits that involve presence, breathing, contemplation, purpose, the brain learns to postpone pleasure for real pleasure. The field calms down, anxiety dissolves, and the vibration rises. In the next chapter, we will learn the true story of a man who spent years visualizing wealth without getting any results, until in a moment of revelation, he changed a single belief. And that was what opened the door to everything he was looking for. Because sometimes the blockage is not in desire, it is in an old, camouflaged idea that needs to be transformed. The true story of a man who visualized wealth for 7 years, but only manifested it when he changed a specific belief. He did everything they said was necessary. He visualized it every day, in detail. He felt the scene, as if it were already real. He repeated affirmations. He practiced gratitude. He tirelessly studied the masters of manifestation. For 7 years, he built in his mind the image of a rich, free, abundant life. But the days passed, and nothing changed. No major change, no clear sign. only the frustration of a vibrational effort that seemed in vain, until one day, tired of repeating formulas, he stopped. And in the midst of the silence, he heard something he had never heard before. An inner voice, almost whispering, asked, "Do you really believe you can have all this without losing the ones you love?" It was at that moment that the truth emerged. Behind all that visualization, there was a deep-rooted, invisible belief that said that wealth would bring loneliness, that having a lot would distance you from the people you loved, that growing too big meant losing your place, being judged, being left out. And as long as that belief existed, your field would never allow it to manifest. Because there was fear, because there was guilt, because there was an unconscious promise not to cross certain boundaries. He then realized the blockage was not in the practice, nor in the technique. It was in the identity, in an inherited, subtle, silent idea that limited his vibration. And in that moment, when he looked this belief in the face and questioned it with love, something fell apart. He did not fight it. He embraced it. He understood where it came from, and he chose to create a new vision, one in which thriving was not about turning away. It was about including. It was about inspiring. It was about transforming without losing connection to what is essential. A few months later, opportunities began to emerge. Connections opened up, and the money, which had previously seemed trapped in an abstract future, began to flow. Not because he visualized better, but because he aligned himself with a new truth. A truth that said, "I can thrive and still be loved. I can grow and still belong. I can be free and still be deeply connected." This story is no exception. It is a mirror. How many visualizations have you done without realizing that they were being sabotaged by an unexamined belief? How many times have you asked for something with your mind, but blocked it with your heart? True manifestation requires congruence between desire and identity, between dream and belief, between what you want and what you actually allow yourself to receive. In the next chapter, we'll delve deeper into this disconnect between mind and emotion, exploring why repeating affirmations can often block your vibration rather than expand it. Because not all repetition is power. Sometimes it's just noise. And noise doesn't create reality, it creates confusion. Why repeating affirmations can block your vibration if you don't understand it. Affirmations have been touted as powerful tools for manifestation, short, direct phrases, repeated frequently. "I am prosperous. I attract wealth. Money comes to me easily." But what happens when those words don't find fertile soil within you? When your body hears them, but doesn't believe them? When your mind repeats them, but your heart shuts down? What should be an instrument of expansion can become a subtle vibrational barrier. The power of affirmations is not in the sound of the words. It is in the energy they carry, in the emotion that accompanies them, in the coherence between what is said and what is felt. When you repeat something that you do not believe, that you do not feel, that you do not recognize as possible, you create a vibrational dissonance. And this dissonance turns into resistance. It is like trying to plant seeds in rocky soil. The intention may be good, but if the ground is not ready, nothing will bloom. Worse, insistence without preparation can compact the earth even more, make it harder, more resistant. The same happens with the energy field. Affirmations made without alignment create noise, and noise blocks reception. Napoleon Hill understood that repetition is a powerful channel for reprogramming the subconscious, but he also knew that this repetition needed to be accompanied by faith, emotion, and vivid mental images. When a phrase is thrown around like an automatic habit, without presence, without emotional roots, it loses its power. It becomes an echo, and the universe does not respond to echoes. It responds to frequencies. That is why it is not just about saying it. It is about feeling it, allowing each word to echo within as a truth being planted and not as a desperate attempt to convince oneself. When there is fear behind the statement, it does not affirm, it denounces. When there is doubt, it does not elevate, it creates tension. When there is a rush, it does not open paths, it closes portals. Transformation happens when you begin to affirm less with your lips and more with your presence. when your routine affirms, your gaze affirms, your breathing affirms, when you become the living affirmation of what you want to attract. And this is only possible with time, with silence, with self-observation. It is not repetition that transforms. It is repetition with awareness. In the next chapter, we will delve into a recurring, often invisible, energetic pattern that silently drives money away. The cycle of desire, doubt, and anxiety, an emotional loop that depletes your vibration and disconnects you from the energy of reception. We will explore how to interrupt this flow and recover the emotional coherence that sustains true manifestation. The cycle of desire, doubt, and anxiety that silently drives money away. Right after intention, desire appears, and with it, a glow, an excitement, a sense that something new is coming. For a few moments, anything seems possible. Your vibration rises, your mind imagines, your heart believes. But then, without you realizing it, doubt creeps in. A subtle thought, an old memory, a voice that says, "Will it really happen?" And this doubt, small at first, spreads like a gentle poison, and soon, anxiety takes the place of faith. This cycle is more common than one might imagine. Desire that arises strongly, doubt that arrives subtly, anxiety that sets in as a response. And the field, which was open, begins to close, because where there was once surrender, there is now tension. Where there was once flow, there is now control. And the energy of manifestation, which requires receptivity, finds a blocked channel. Napoleon Hill taught that faith is self-sustaining. It does not depend on external proof. It is born from an internal decision, a decision to trust even when the world has not yet given signs. But this trust is incompatible with anxious desire, because anxiety communicates to the universe a frequency of urgency, of need, of scarcity. Anxiety says, "I need this to feel good." Faith says, "I am already at peace, even while I wait." And this difference changes everything, because the first vibrates in lack, the second vibrates in fullness. And the universe, always faithful to vibrational coherence, responds to what you are being, not to what you are asking for. Interrupting this cycle requires awareness. It requires noticing, with kindness, when desire begins to turn into tension, when expectation becomes demand, when the dream stops being a flow and becomes a burden. And at that moment, breathe, be silent, return to the body, return to the now, because it is in the now that the field realigns itself. It is in the now that the frequency is restored. Often, it is necessary to desire less in order to receive more, not because the desire is wrong, but because excessive attachment to the result reveals distrust. And where there is distrust, energy does not circulate. Money, like everything that is vibrational, needs space to enter, and anxiety takes up all that space with assumptions, fears, and attempts at control. The cure for this cycle is not in desiring more strongly. It is in desiring more gently, with more surrender, with more connection. When desire meets peace, a new vibration is born. A vibration that does not beg, does not demand, does not wait. It simply vibrates. It simply sustains. And this, more than any effort, attracts. Next, we will address one of the most neglected obstacles in the manifestation journey: excess internal noise. Because when the mind does not stop, when there is too much noise, there is no space for guidance to arrive. And without this silent connection, the field of abundance becomes inaccessible. It is time to explore the role of inner silence as a bridge to true prosperity. How the lack of inner silence prevents your connection to the field of abundance. There is a wisdom that is not revealed in noise, a direction that only shows itself in the space between thoughts. Abundance, as a frequency, is subtle. It does not invade. It offers itself, and it can only be heard by those who've learned to silence the internal noise that so distracts, so disperses, so confuses. Excess mental noise is one of the invisible causes of vibrational stagnation, because even though we want to, many people are unable to hear what the universe is trying to tell them. We live in a culture that values constant movement, uninterrupted speech, and accelerated thinking. But Napoleon Hill understood that true connection with the creative field arises in silence. in the space between one thought and another, at the moment when the mind stops searching for answers and finally listens to those that were already present. A noisy mind creates interference. Every thought that contradicts your intention, every unheeded doubt, every unhealed judgment, all vibrate as noise, and the field, sensitive as it is, becomes disorganized. It is like trying to hear a soft melody amidst the noise of several radios playing at the same time. The guidance does not disappear, but you cannot perceive it. This noise is not made up of words alone. It is made up of unnamed fears, of memories that insist on repeating themselves, of worries that take up too much space, of expectations that multiply and project themselves onto everything. And while this noise rules, there is no room for insight, for inspired impulse, for the clarity that creates vibrational direction. Being silent is not about stopping thinking. It is about observing thoughts without getting confused by them. It is about creating a space between stimulus and response. It is about recovering the inner mastery that allows you to choose what to cultivate. When this space is created, the field clears. And when the field clears, the signal of abundance is once again captured. Napoleon Hill called this spiritual intelligence in action, a state in which you don't just think, you receive. You don't just act. You feel when to act. You don't just desire. You become a channel, and that channel needs to be unobstructed. It needs to be present. It needs to be available. Inner silence is practice, but it is also permission. Permission to pause, to not know, to listen, to slow down without guilt, to trust that, in the void, something greater can reveal itself. And it does. In the next chapter, we will delve into the paradox of inspired action, a truth often ignored. Stopping at times can accelerate your prosperity, because when doing comes from misalignment, it does not build. But when not doing comes from listening, it prepares the ground for miracles. The paradox of inspired action, why stopping can accelerate your prosperity. The logic of the world teaches that doing is the only way to move forward, that stopping is wasting time, that not acting is being irresponsible. But in the field of manifestation, this logic is a dangerous mistake, because not every action moves, and not every pause stagnates. There is a type of doing that blocks, and there is a type of silence that opens doors. Napoleon Hill understood that there are times when action, however well-intentioned, becomes counterproductive, especially when it comes from anxiety, fear, or haste. When you act just to avoid waiting, just to silence doubt, just to prove something, this action does not create reality. It only prolongs the misalignment. The paradox is simple and profound. Stopping, when done with presence, accelerates, because listening is born in silence, and listening gives rise to the right direction. Inspired action is not just any movement. It is that step that comes from the center, that arises after vibrational discernment, that is born from a clean and receptive field. It is that decision that seems small, but that opens gigantic paths, because it carries the energy of truth. Abundance does not reveal itself in disoriented effort. It manifests itself when there is harmony, and attunement requires pause. It requires observation. It requires waiting for the moment when the field responds clearly, not like magic, but like coherence. Stopping is not giving up. It is preparing. It is aligning. It is letting go of control so that intuition can guide. And when intuition guides, time changes. Connections emerge. Opportunities appear. And what seemed distant approaches gently. This is the time of wisdom, of spiritual intelligence in action. The same that Hill recognized in the great visionaries. They did not move by impulse. They moved by vibration. And their prosperity was not the result of work alone, but of an internal alignment that put them in the right place, at the right time, with the right energy. Pause is fertile when it is not contaminated by fear, when it is chosen, not imposed, when it is inhabited with trust, not with guilt. And in this space, the universe works in your favor, because you got out of the way, because you trusted. Now let's dive into the depths of the unconscious, exploring how the shadow, that hidden, an often rejected side of our psyche, directly influences your relationship with money, and how denying this part of yourself can block the flow of prosperity more than any strategic failure. Jung's shadow effect on financial manifestation. There is a part of you that you do not show, that you may not even know exists. A part made up of repressed impulses, denied desires, emotions that have been judged as wrong, dangerous, inadequate. Carl Jung called it the shadow, and although it is hidden, it vibrates. It vibrates with force. It vibrates with impact. It vibrates with consequences. The shadow is everything that has been removed from the light of consciousness. But the fact that it is out of your sight does not mean that it has stopped acting. On the contrary, many times it is this hidden part that drives your most decisive choices. It is the part that blocks manifestation. It is the part that sabotages abundance. It is the part that distorts the relationship with money. Napoleon Hill spoke about the importance of assuming one's inner power. But how can you assume a power that you have learned to fear? How can you desire wealth if, deep down, you feel guilty about it? How can you allow yourself to thrive if your shadow still believes that being ambitious is selfish, that being successful is corrupt, that growing too much is becoming someone you have judged your entire life? This fragmentation creates noise in the vibrational field. On one side, the conscious desire for abundance. On the other, the unconscious rejection of what it represents. This conflict consumes energy. It sabotages clarity. It creates paradoxical behaviors. You approach and retreat. You receive and lose. You conquer and blame yourself. The way forward is not to deny the shadow, nor to fight it. It is to integrate it, to look at it with compassion, to recognize that even the impulses you judged as bad had a function, to protect you, to keep you accepted, to avoid pain. But now you can choose something different. You can expand your consciousness and allow these forgotten parts to be reintegrated into your being. When you embrace your ambition, it becomes purpose. When you embrace your anger, it becomes creative force. When you embrace your pain, it becomes empathy. Everything that is accepted transforms, and this transformation raises the vibration. It takes away the weight of the internal struggle. It makes room for flow. It frees up energy to create, to serve, to prosper. Abundance is not just a matter of technique. It is a matter of integrated vibrational identity. And this identity is only strengthened when you stop fighting with yourself, when you understand that each part of you has a place. And that true manifestation happens when light meets shadow, and together they become whole. The vibrational trinity of manifestation, thought, feeling, and coherence. At the heart of manifestation lies a sacred triad: thought, feeling, and coherence. Three pillars that, when aligned, create a powerful frequency capable of shaping reality. But when misaligned, they generate dissonance, confusion, and invisible blockages. Thought is the seed. It is the idea that is born in the mind, the desire that is formed, the intention that is established. But a seed, by itself, does not flourish. It needs fertile soil, care, and favorable conditions. And that's where feeling comes in. Feeling is the ground. It's the emotion that nourishes thought, that gives life to the idea, that transforms intention into vibration. But even with clear thinking and intense feeling, if there is no coherence, manifestation is lost. Coherence is the alignment between what you think, what you feel, and what you do. It is the congruence between the mind, the heart, and the actions. Without coherence, energy is dispersed. The universe receives contradictory signals, and the result is stagnation. Napoleon Hill understood this dynamic. He knew that it's not enough to wish. You have to feel the desire as if it had already been fulfilled. And more than that, you have to live in accordance with this feeling. Act as if you already have it. Think as if you already are. Feel as if you already live the desired reality. When thought, feeling, and action are in harmony, manifestation becomes inevitable. Because the universe responds to coherence, it recognizes the aligned vibration and amplifies it. It transforms clear intention into tangible reality. But achieving this vibrational trinity requires self-observation. It requires noticing when thoughts say one thing, but feelings say another. When actions contradict intentions. When there is noise between what we want and what we experience. The practice of coherence is a daily exercise. It is a commitment to inner truth. It is the choice to align each thought, each emotion, and each action with the greater purpose. And in this alignment, manifestation ceases to be an effort and becomes a flow. Next, we will explore a metaphor that illustrates this vibrational dynamic in a simple and profound way: the poorly tuned emotional radio, an image that reveals how, many times, we are trying to capture a frequency of abundance while we are tuned into fear, doubt, and scarcity. Metaphor: the mistuned emotional radio. Imagine an old radio with a tuning knob that needs to be turned gently until you find the right frequency. If you turn it too much, you lose the signal. If you turn it too little, you hear only noise. This is the vibrational field of abundance. You may desire to hear a melody of prosperity, but if your frequency is mistuned, all you will hear is static, white noise, confusion, interference. It is possible to desire wealth and still be tuned to the frequency of fear. It is possible to repeat affirmations of abundance and continue to emit guilt, shame, or distrust. And what you hear from the universe, in this case, is not music, it is distortion, because the vibration you sustain, even without realizing it, defines what you receive. The metaphor of the radio is more than a poetic image. It is a key to understanding. When you feel misaligned, lost, disconnected from your ability to manifest, perhaps it is not the desire that is weak. Perhaps it is just the tuning that needs to be adjusted. A small internal shift, a gesture of presence, a conscious breath, a different choice can completely change the channel you are broadcasting on. Napoleon Hill talked about the importance of thinking clearly, feeling deeply, and acting with purpose. And that requires listening to your own vibration, because the radio is not external, it is internal, it is within you. And learning to tune it is one of the greatest powers anyone can acquire. You don't have to force the music to play, you just have to find it. And that is done with sensitivity, with consistency, with intention, not in a hurry, not with fear, not with noise. Now, with a clearer attunement, it is possible to deepen this connection by reprogramming your internal field. And to do that, we enter into a concrete and powerful practice: how to use neuroplasticity to transform your relationship with money in just 21 days. Because the brain learns, and what is standard today can become the past. How neuroplasticity can reprogram your relationship with money in 21 days. The human brain is not a fixed system. It is moldable, adaptable, alive. Science calls this neuroplasticity, the ability we have to create new neural connections, to alter old mental pathways, to literally transform the way we think, feel, and react. And when applied consciously, this plasticity becomes one of the most powerful tools for aligning the mind with the frequency of abundance. For years, you may have been repeating to yourself that money is scarce, difficult, dirty, or dangerous. And each repetition has created a path, a pattern, a neural highway that your attention and emotions usually follow. The more you feed this pattern, the more automatic it becomes. And over time, it stops feeling like belief. It starts feeling like reality. But the good news is that every road can be replaced. Every path can be retraced. The process begins with intention and presence. For 21 days, if you direct your attention to a new vibrational pattern, one more aligned with worthiness, flow, and trust, your brain will begin to respond. But not just with words, with images, with sensations, with breathing, with your body. When you visualize with genuine emotion, a harmonious financial reality, the brain does not distinguish this from a real experience. It activates reward circuits. It releases neurotransmitters of well-being. It records that experience as possible. And the more you repeat this practice with coherence, the more the nervous system calms down. Financial anxiety begins to dissolve, and the field begins to reorganize itself. The key is to repeat with meaning, not in a hurry, not with demands, but with presence, with kindness, with a loving intention to offer your body a new memory, because the body is often the place where the oldest beliefs hide. It is not enough to think differently. You have to feel differently, breathe differently, live differently, even if for a few minutes a day. 21 days are not a miracle. They are a portal, a minimal cycle of vibrational reconfiguration, a space where new paths can begin to form, paths that say, it is safe to prosper, I can trust, I can receive, I am a channel for the flow of abundance. This practice paves the way for an even deeper understanding. Gratitude not as a mental exercise, but as a complete vibrational state, because true gratitude is not a list. It is a body that already lives, as if everything has arrived, and that is why it transforms. Why your gratitude frequency needs to be more than a daily ritual. Many have learned that gratitude attracts, that gratitude opens doors, raises vibration, connects with the field of abundance. And this is true, but only when this gratitude is born from the body, not just from the head. Only when it vibrates as a state of being, not as a hasty list. Gratitude, to be a creative force, needs to be more than words. It needs to be presence. Repeating, I am grateful every day does not mean that the body believes it. Often, this repetition becomes an empty habit, an attempt to manipulate the universe, a mask over the pain that has not been looked at, and the field notices, because the vibration of the true gratitude cannot be faked. It is felt. It pulsates. Napoleon Hill understood that the emotional state precedes manifestation, and gratitude, when genuine, is one of the highest states that a human being can sustain. It does not depend on what has arrived. It anticipates. It prepares the field. It communicates to the universe. I recognize abundance even when it is still invisible. But there is a subtle difference between real gratitude and strategic gratitude. The first expands. The second contracts. The first generates peace. The second generates demand. The first is a free choice. The second is a disguised expectation. That is why true gratitude does not require effort. It happens when you surrender to the present with acceptance, even if there is discomfort. When you realize that the mere fact of breathing, feeling, evolving is already sacred. This type of gratitude transforms the body into a vibrational temple. It makes each gesture, each thought, each silence carry a frequency that magnetizes, because you're not just giving thanks for something. You are becoming the very expression of abundance, and the universe recognizes this. It does not respond to the voice. It responds to the coherence of the vibration that the voice carries. When gratitude becomes a state, reality begins to reflect this state, and what previously seemed distant begins to arrive, not as a reward, but as a reflection. This understanding opens space for us to access one of Napoleon Hill's most intriguing secrets, a technique that unites imagination, intuition, and deep spiritual connection, the creation of an invisible council, a mental circle where great minds, even if they are no longer on this plane, offer answers, ideas, and direction, a symbolic bridge between eternal wisdom and the steps you need to take here, now. How Napoleon Hill used the invisible council to access wisdom and opportunities. There is a place within the mind where time bends, where the boundaries between planes dissolve, where intuition finds a voice. Napoleon Hill accessed this place with a ritual as simple as it is profound. He called it the Invisible Council, a symbolic space created by imagination, where he would mentally meet with great figures from history, thinkers, leaders, inventors, to seek clarity, vision, ideas, not as a game, but as a practice of spiritual and strategic attunement. He believed that the mind, when focused with intention, could connect with a larger field of intelligence, and that by imagining a meeting with beings who represented specific qualities, courage, wisdom, creativity, vision, the subconscious began to access those same qualities within itself. It wasn't just imagination, It was resonance. It was a vibrational alignment with powerful archetypes. Each member of this invisible council represented a force, a part of the soul, and, over time, Hill began to feel answers, advice, and directions coming from these symbolic figures. It was as if the field responded to his intention with insights, as if the universe took advantage of this space of deep listening to offer what the awakened mind could not yet access on its own. The value of this exercise lies in surrender, in the willingness to allow the silence to speak, for the internal image to come to life, for the heart to trust in the answers that do not come from linear reasoning, but from an older, broader, more intuitive wisdom. By cultivating this space, Hill not only received ideas for his projects, he cultivated courage, he regained focus, he reminded himself every day that he was not alone. This practice invites us to do the same, to recognize that within us there is a temple of listening, a place where wisdom gathers, where the highest aspects of our being dialogue with the intention of the soul, where the presence of those who inspire us becomes an active frequency within our field. Prosperity is not born solely from technical knowledge. It flourishes in the union between strategy and sensitivity, between structure and spirit, between mind and mystery. The invisible council is a bridge between these worlds, and those who learn to cross it discover that the answers they seek outside were inside all along, just waiting for a place to manifest. Money as a reflection of your spiritual coherence. Every journey that begins with intention must end in consciousness. And it is with this consciousness that we conclude this dive into the invisible laws of financial manifestation, not as an end, but as a new beginning. Because if there is one thing that Napoleon Hill left as an eternal legacy, it is the certainty that everything you see out there, everything you desire, pursue, visualize, has already begun within you. What the mind of man can conceive and believe, it can achieve. Hill did not write this phrase as poetry. He wrote it as a science of the soul. But what sustains this possibility is not just the mental image. It is the vibration that accompanies this image. It is the frequency that keeps you alive even when the world seems to deny it. Wealth, therefore, is not the goal. It is a reflection. It is the mirror of your inner coherence, the natural result of an emotional field aligned with serving, creating, expanding. When you vibrate truth, the universe responds with resources. When you vibrate deserving, it responds with fluidity. When you vibrate purpose, it responds with opportunities. Life always listens to what you feel and responds. There is no trick. There is no magic formula. There is presence. There is practice. There is daily reconnection with what you really are, a creative, sensitive being, connected to a greater intelligence. And it is in this intelligence that abundance is anchored, not as an empty luxury, but as an expression of plenitude, as a natural expansion of a soul in a state of service. Joe Dispenza says that you do not attract what you want. You attract what you are, neurologically, emotionally, energetically. This means that all change begins in the field. It begins in the invisible. It begins in the silence where you decide, firmly and lightly, to become a channel for the reality you wish to live, and to maintain that choice. Even when everything still seems the same, you don't need to control the world. You don't need to force results. You just need to create an internal field so coherent, so luminous, so available, that the world, upon encountering that field, has no choice but to respond. Abundance is not an achievement. It is a consequence. The wealth you seek is not in the future. It is in the vibration you choose now. And this now is the portal to everything. Choosing to align your vibration is the true beginning. When you stop looking for the right moment and start vibrating as if it were already happening, something changes. Time bends. Possibilities take shape. The invisible begins to become visible. And what seemed distant, impossible, unattainable, becomes part of your field. Because everything begins with a choice. The choice to align with the truest version of who you already are. It's not about achieving more. It's about remembering. Remember that you have always been part of a universe that does not respond to words, but to vibrations that does not move through effort, but through coherence, that does not deliver what you beg for, but what you sustain. Each step of this script was written to touch what is beyond logic, to activate the memory of your energy field, to remind you, in simple words, that the power was never outside. It was just dormant inside. And that, when it awakens, this power does not shout. It guides. It whispers. It realigns. Now the invitation is silent. Choose to vibrate before seeing, feel before having, be before receiving. Because when vibration becomes presence, the world transforms into a response. And this response will not come as magic. It will come as coherence, as a reflection, as a non-negotiable vibrational merit. If this message has touched your soul, it is because you are ready, not to seek more, but to vibrate with more truth. And the truth always manifests.